To talk more on this sector right now, we have with us Mr. Rajeev Boudhankar, Vice President of Kohinoor Hospitals, who is joining our studio. Welcome to the news, sir.
Good afternoon to you.
Well, looking at this sector, basically the country like India, which has the largest population probably in the world, need a good and quality healthcare needs here. But looking at the sector as a whole, how do you see the growth of this sector particularly?
If I can quote a few statistics, the present healthcare market as of now in India, it is valued somewhere around $65 billion. So if you see the size of the Indian market, it is quite huge, and it is expected to grow at a compounded annual growth rate of 15.5% by 2017 to a figure of $155 billion. So which is a huge in terms of 15.5% CAGR. It's a huge growth. So when we look at this market, we have to look at also the macroeconomics. In a country like India, where the healthcare sector contributes to 4.5% of the GDP, overall GDP, it is an industry which follows the software and the reality. After that, healthcare sector is a fast growing sector. So with this background in mind, I think it's high time the government of India thinks in terms of strengthening the healthcare structure of the country. Now, given the present scenario, I'll just quote a few figures for you. The government spend in terms of GDP in India is just 0.9% of the total GDP. Compare this with the world average, which is 9.5 to 9.6% of any government spend in terms of GDP. So vast difference, if you see. And in terms of absolute numbers, in terms of spend, the private sector spends 74% in the healthcare sector, whereas government spends only 26%. So if this sector has to be fueled, growth has to be fueled, it is government policies which will fuel the growth, because every time the industry is told that you go to the villages, you go to tier 2, tier 3 cities, you only go to the metro cities. We are telling the government that, look here, we want you to give us policies which will want us to go to the 2 tier 3 tier towns. Now, for example, in the present budget, we were expecting healthcare to be given the status of infrastructure. If infrastructure status was given to us, imagine what would have happened. I'll just quote a few figures. For example, when infrastructure status is given, what happens is external commercial borrowing route opens up for the healthcare sector.
ECB route gets open for the
exactly. And through this route, we get funds at a very cheap rate. Interest rates are very cheap, almost 3 to 4% only. So what happens is a fillip to us to go to the 2 and 3 tier cities to invest over there. This is number one. Number two is we get tax holidays in terms of presently there is a ceiling of a limit of $100 million per annum. If this route was open, if infrastructure status was given to us, it would jump straight to $500 billion, which is a huge jump in terms of funding. Then we also get presently where there is a 5-year tax holiday, we get straight double, a 10-year tax holiday. So again, that helps the growth of industry.
That's a very important point I have to ask you, is that probably, let me first of all tell your viewer that probably a person from the US spent across 13% from his own pockets, especially for the healthcare needs. But compared to the India, the spending is 76% from his own pocket basically. So you can imagine the difference here. Exactly right. The tax you're talking about basically, but what are the fundamental things that government needs to be given exactly? If not in the budget, and no, there are so many other things also government have opened, that different policies are there, rules and regulations are there. So what needs to be done in that case?
For example, now we talked about, I was just talking about the infrastructure status. Just for the common viewer, because many people may not know this. Once the infrastructure status is given, we have calculated, the industry has calculated that we can reach 100 towns with a population of 5 lakhs, which is having an average population of 5 lakhs, 2 tier and 3 tier cities. So we are almost touching the rural areas. Some entrepreneurs may also want to go to the villages. So we will be adding 30,000 more beds to the present strength. There will be investment of 10,000 crores in terms of investments, and generation of employment will be 7 lakh in healthcare industry. So see the jump in the employment for the common man, and Just a very curious statistic, you talked about private sector. 22% of the private beds are situated in 8 top metro cities of the country, where only 5% of the population is being
taking how big potential that a country has if
exactly.
to the tier 2 and 3 cities. Exactly.
Right,
That's what you have to say. But talking about the PPP model, we always talk about the PPP model in infrastructure sector, or maybe the sectors that government is trying to venture into. How do you see the model, especially in this sector? Will it get more success to it, or what needs to be done to attract more and more private participation?
Yes, PPP is a very good model. It is one model which has not been tried in India, unfortunately. Even in this budget, we actually expected to see some fillip for healthcare PPPs, but it was not to be. Anyway, talking about PPPs, if the government can help the healthcare sector, I'll give you an example of South Africa. If you compare the economy of South Africa with that of India, social and cultural similarities are also there, economic similarities are also there. And if you compare PPP projects in South Africa, 20% of PPP projects in South Africa are healthcare projects, whereas in India you will actually have to go and search around where are the PPP projects in India. So what will happen is, if the government comes into and helps the private sector for PPP projects, first of all we can start private medical, from private medical college we can have medical college based on PPP, nursing college based on PPP, technical education, paramedical based on PPP. So what happens is, human resources, they increase, because we are actually lacking human resources in terms of absolute numbers also. In terms of infrastructure also, if you see the infrastructure today, we have 0.9 beds per 1,000 population, and the global average is 3 beds per 1,000 population. And to reach to this average, global average, we need an investment of $75 billion, and it will take us at least $30 billion per annum to reach to this figure by 2020, to reach the global average. See the big gap. So this is where we are talking about BPP projects, we are talking about external funding, we are talking about private sector coming in a big way. So government should now start thinking in terms of the larger interest of the population.
Exactly. Looking at this budget specifically, that the government is trying to focus on the healthcare sector, and that's what you have seen, the rural health mission also, the midday meal also, the government has tried to allocate the money. Apart from that, the Unani Ayurvedic needs also there, sectors are there, Ayush is there. How do you see this development? Basically, the announcement by the government have made this time around to the budget will give the fillip to the sector.
Like any other budget, I mean, budget should always be looked at from the point of view of the macro economy, including the world economy. So many people have criticized the budget, some have given it good points, but I feel that when we look at the healthcare budget vis-a-vis the macroeconomics of the country and the world, there are some of the measures that the government has taken which are quite good. For example, in this budget, the 6 AIIMS-like institutions for medical colleges are going to get allocation of 1,650 crores. So naturally, it's going to be a fillip to the new medical students, new postgraduate students coming in. So that will be a big help to the human resources in the healthcare sector. Training and research, which is in India, somehow lacking behind, has been given in this budget of allocation of 4,727 crores, which is again a very good figure. So it will help training and research in the healthcare sector. One very nice point the finance minister has highlighted in the budget is allocation. Though it's a small step, is a beginning of a big road and a very progressive road. The 100 districts of the country in 21 states have been allotted, the hospitals in these places have been allotted for geriatric, that is healthcare for the elders, a sum of 150 crores. I am saying it's not a big number, but 150 crores is a good small beginning, where the rural population, which is under poverty, the BPL population, and in this BPL population, the elderly ones, which are absolutely thrown to the wolves, if I can use into inverted commas, they will get a fillip. So there's something the government has given to these neglected societies. And you talked about Ayush. Ayush has been given an allocation of 1,069 crores. Ayush, is Ayurvedic, Unani, biochemical medicine, homeopathy. So these are not in the mainstream as of now, and these are the systems of medicine that are giving healthcare to the rural sectors. So when you bring them through the National Health Mission in the mainstream, what will happen is it will help standardization of these systems of medicine. So there is going to be standardization in terms of quality, in terms of because for example, there is a general belief that these drugs, for example, Ayurvedic drugs, many people believe that they have heavy metals. Now once it is standardized and once it comes to the mainstream, there will be standardization in terms of pricing, MRP pricing, in terms of quality control, in terms of FDA control. So automatically spurious medicines will go out from the market. These medicines, this system of medicine will reach bigger population. The net of the wider net will be for the rural population.
Exactly.
So it is a very good point.
On that point also is that India is standing among the 5 top countries in the pharma sector. Basically,
Right.
We are the biggest pharma industry we have, and we counted among the 5 1. Apart from that, I also said that generic medicine is a new phenomenon that coming into the country, but we have to focus more on that because so other markets are also trying to capture this generic medicine market. Basically, how do you look at this generic medicine market panning out in India?
General medicine market is a very big market. In fact, it's a virgin market vis-a-vis the world, not only India but the world. Because what is happening in this industry, the multinationals are actually ruling the roost. The Indian Medical Council also has recently come up with a diktat that doctors should prescribe only generic medicines. Now, what will happen is once the generic medicine market picks up, the reach of these medicines, the allopathic medicines especially, will be covering a larger population because the cost of medicine will come down. So when the cost of medicines will come down, doctors will be able to prescribe better medicines to a wider mass of population, to the extent that even the rural population will benefit and the poorer sections of society will benefit, especially from the even in the urban poor. For example, the government has now combined the urban health mission and the rural health mission. So under that, the poorer section of the urban society will also, because they will also benefit because they will get medicines at cheaper rate through government and municipal hospitals. So that is a good step.
Exactly, that's a very good step here probably, but as far as a country like India, generic medicine could be definitely one of the biggest advantage for the population because it's a very low cost. You will get a good kind of medicines here, and that's what the government is trying to main focus on. And probably many of the multinational companies and other foreign companies also try to invest into these generic medicine
right.
at this point in time.
Right.
Looking at the FDI flow in this sector, we have seen you talking about that. We also talked that infrastructure sector should be given to this sector.
Right.
But looking at the FDI flow specifically to the sector, how do you see that? Is it okay for that this point of time, or probably more rules and regulations need to be eased so that more and more FDI should come into the sector to give good support to the entire sector?
In terms of the foreign investment, a lot of PE is coming now into the healthcare sector, because healthcare sector seem to be a sunrise industry in the country. And I can give you an example of the software industry. In the 1990s, you see software industry was at a starting point. It was at the sunrise industry. Similar is the status of the healthcare industry in India now. We are at the point where we are going to take off, and when we take off, it's going to almost going to be in parallel to the software industries. So when the foreign investors are looking at this, as I quoted you the growth that is going to be, and with this growth, when PEs come in and they invest into Indian healthcare industry, naturally the industry is going to get a big flip in terms of infrastructure, biomedical equipment, drugs, consumables, implants. So that's a good step forward.
Exactly. Thank you, Mr. Boudhankar, for sharing those thoughts with us and enlighten our viewers that exactly where we are heading, especially the healthcare sector is concerned. Let's move to the stories now. The Indian equities turned negative today.